So if you're a real estate investor that is beginning some new marketing campaigns, whether it's you're adding a widget of you're starting Facebook ads, you're starting to generate leads through Facebook or PPC, SEO, TV, whatever it is, organic content, social media, whatever you are adding on, a lot of times as business owners and entrepreneurs, it's our innate nature to want to try something ourselves, learn how to do it, and then go implement it ourselves, right? The problem with doing that sometimes, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people out there that it actually makes sense for them to learn by failing, but maybe you don't have the capital or the time, the resources to be able to go try to learn something yourself, become an expert in it, and then actually like allow it to develop over time and that sort of thing, and then you get good at it. Maybe you're like, I really need leads right now. So what's the natural thing to go do is to actually go find a company that is going to do it for you, right? A professional PPC company, professional third-party TV ad management company, that sort of thing. There's pros and cons to both, right? At some point, if you scale large enough, you can have all that kind of stuff in-house. And a lot of times that's what some of my friends that have bigger real estate businesses will actually do is they bring that stuff in-house. However, when you're a smaller organization and you can't afford to go out and take the time that it takes to learn how to do these different marketing methods, then it does make sense to bring on a third party, team to actually manage that stuff for you. Now, there's some things that we go over today with my friend, Matt Paxson, who has about 15 years worth of real estate experience and has been around the block when it comes to running through with, and he even gave an example that he's leveraged several PPC companies and finally found one that was really, really good. A lot of times that's the scare that, that creates a lot of scarcity and a mindset of like, man, I'm not sure who I want to go with because, I get a referral. And I always say this, like, you could have somebody that refers over any kind of marketing agency of any sorts, and they will sing their praises and say they did an amazing job. And then maybe when they get to you, you don't get the same results, or you don't get the same service and stuff like that. That kind of stuff does happen. So it's important to make sure that you're hiring out the proper team to be able to do that. A lot of it does start with, are they an industry expert? So I'm not going to plug myself, but specifically me, I only work with real estate investors in my space. And the number one thing that I get feedback on when I'm working with a client is, Josh, it's really awesome that you have the experience in this industry to be able to give us very contextual information and guidance throughout the time period. Whereas if another social media agency or podcast management agency was working with other industries, it would be kind of hard to relate in a way and understand where the problem is and where they're trying to go. So a lot of times when you're hiring an agency or a third-party management team or marketing agency, you have to kind of go through a process of figuring out who's going to work best for you. Now, there's a few things that we go through to kind of help find that, but it's important to make sure that you don't just give up on that and say either I'm going to ditch the whole PPC idea or, like you go through people and you just completely fire every single person that you ever go through. You also need to make sure that you're setting the right expectations with the team that you're going to be working with, because a lot of times that could be the problem as well. So that's just a communication thing. So today we talk about that with Matt Paxson. There's a lot of great value that's delivered on this episode. Matt talks about his experience in marketing with, hiring third-party agencies and that sort of thing. And we go through that as well, which I think is a very valuable thing for people to learn, because almost anybody that's listening to this podcast right now, you probably have or are currently working with a third-party agency of some sorts that's maybe managing your direct mail or managing your PPC, or you're at least on the hunt for it, right? So maybe you're sick of it. Maybe you're like, I don't know what to do. Today's episode is going to help you out with that. So without further ado, this is my good friend, Matt Paxson. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler. And today I've got a really good episode in store for you with my good friend, Matt Paxson out of Fredericksburg. I almost stumbled over that. Fredericksburg and Richmond, Virginia. How you doing, Matt? It's good to see you.
I'm doing great, Josh. Thanks for having me on your show.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about, let me back up here for a second. When we talk about marketing, there's quite a bit of overlap between marketing and sales, and that process of the handoff from the lead to whether it's a lead manager or just an acquisitions person that you have on your team, or maybe it's you that's specifically doing it because you're the best salesperson on the team, or maybe you're a small team and you're the only salesperson on the team, whatever that looks like for you. But we're going to be talking about how Matt, Matt, you've been in real estate for 14 years, 15 years, something like that?
Yeah, Feels like a lifetime, huh?
Yeah, for sure. We're going to be talking about with him how he has worked that process and what that has looked like over the course of his real estate career. Obviously, being in real estate, Matt, for 15 years, I've been in it for now actually going on 13 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. Started off really young. Even I've seen some weird market cycles, nothing too crazy. I got into the real estate investing space right after the recession, right out of high school, 2011, 2012. So even I've seen some stuff, but you go even further back and see some things. So in terms of like when we were talking beforehand, you had talked about like you take the lead basically from the marketing and then get it to the finish line. How has that evolved for you over time, or has that been a very timeless kind of process that you've worked through the entire career of your real estate investing? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Josh, that's a good question. The truth is that's just evolved over time. When we first started out, I remember my then business partner, we bought our first home, made about $40,000 on it. And we were like, if we could do this for the rest of our lives, we'll be set. Well, before we knew it, Josh, we were doing 3 homes a month, then 5 homes a month. And then at one point we were doing 25 homes a month. And it was a different market. There was a lot of opportunity back then, but we were flipping as much as we could. And so over time, though, the hats that we've worn have kind of changed. Initially, I was doing it all. I was trying to run the Google AdWords. I was running our online presence. I was showing up to the courthouse steps to buy properties. I was knocking on doors of home sellers. I was doing pre-fours. I was doing driving for dollars. I was doing the whole thing. And then over time, as we became more sophisticated, and we flipped probably 1,200 homes over the last 10 plus years, over time, then we begin to outsource those things. And I think it's important for people to realize what you're good at and what you're not good at. Like running AdWords, I'm not so good at that. I could play with that all day long, but it just goes over my head. You got to stay in it and on it all the time, and I'm just not good at it. So we outsource that to somebody currently. I have a team of people in Egypt now that call down our list provider, the list that we get from our list provider. I've got an acquisitions person that kind of filters the leads once they get them on the hook and then hands them off to me and sets up an appointment. So really, I'm just doing the thing that I'm the best at, which is going on the appointments, getting the contract signed, and then giving it over to the title company to get it to closing.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting to go in this direction, but I want to go in this direction.
Sure.
I think a lot of real estate investors have a really hard time of handing things off, right? Like not just in marketing and sales, but in general.
Yeah.
It's a whole bootstrapping thing. And I'm not saying that like from day one, you need to hire 6 people on your marketing and sales team, but for you over the course of your career and the people that you've had on your team, the positions that you've plugged people into, what's that process look like? Like, is there a good kind of like position to be in order to hire that first marketing person? Or maybe it starts with a lot of people start with a virtual assistant that's helping them with their marketing and that sort of thing. Like, where's a good, if somebody's listening right now and they're like, I'm a solopreneur, I'm doing deals, like a couple deals a month or whatever, but I want to scale that. Where do I start with my first hire from, and I know a lot of people will say like your first hire should be an EA or a transaction coordinator or whatever, but in the marketing or sales departments, where do you start from there?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a slew of things there. When you become more sophisticated, you can start to screen the employees and start to get their innate gifting a little bit better. One of the best things that we ever did is we turned on, it's called Cultural Index, and it's expensive. It's about $8,000, give or take, for a year, but that helped us hone in when people would apply. What we used to do is this, Josh. We put out an ad on Indeed. 1,000 people would reply. Matt would go through all the resumes, just glancing at them. I'd cherry pick a handful, bring them in. They would kind of give me their best pitch during an interview. And then I would hire them. And often I would put them in the wrong positions because I had no idea how they were really wired.
Yeah.
The Cultural Index will give you their innate gifting. And so you get the right people in the right spots, right? So that's kind of the more sophisticated answer if your business is more developed. If it's not developed, what we always tell people is you want to lead with revenue. Like that needs to be in the first position. So don't start exporting things right away that you need to learn how to do because you have to build your systems and your processes. So yeah, you can hire companies to do certain things, but you should probably do a lot of that in-house. There's some technical things like maybe AdWords that you want to outsource, but there's easy things that you could do that cost no money, like driving for dollars, right? And you just pull over, You can write down the address and you can go home and you can send them a mailer, or you could just get brave, walk up the driveway, knock on the door. I can't tell you how many homes we bought just by doing that, right? Or there's the pre-fours, which is a pretty good list for us. Like there are free things that you can do that you should do today. So then when you hire people, you have a system and you have a process built out to hire them into. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's no different than like, I forget who we had on the show. I think it was Andrew Newland out of Springfield, Missouri. And we were talking about, there's really two ways to run your marketing. Is it spending your time or spending your money? And early on, like, you're going to be spending your time. It's doing those things. It's driving for dollars. It's door knocking. It's that kind of stuff that you can spend your time to do in order to be able to generate some deals. Like you said, leading with revenue, that's important, right? If you don't have the revenue to be able to hire somebody to do your AdWords or run your PPC or Facebook ads or whatever it is that you're doing, that maybe you don't have a technical experience in, then just imagine, if you're not expert in those things and you try to work on them yourselves, you could throw a lot of money down the pipe. But if you spend some time and generate revenue and bring in professionals to do it, that's where ultimately you're going to come out on top. I think we're on the same page there, right?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's really important though for you to capture those systems and the processes. Now you want to lead with revenue, and like if you're in the investing space, wholesale a couple of deals, do the uncomfortable things today, like knocking on doors, get a few contracts, find an investor and wholesale the deals. In fact, I had a guy recently who wholesaled me a deal. He made $50,000 off of the wholesale. I took it, flipped it, had all the permits, all the hassle and all the risk. And I think I made $32,000 off it. So who was in the better position there? The wholesaler, right? That's not always the worst spot to be in. Get some contracts locked up, wholesale them. Then you lead with revenue. Then you go find these really high-end PPC and AdWords and all these companies. But you got to keep in mind, most of those companies, they have no idea they know what they're doing, but they just blow smoke. So you want to find the best ones. I mean, I've gone through in the last 10 plus years, probably a dozen PPC companies because they're just maybe not that many, maybe it's a half dozen, but they're just not all good. And you got to stay on them, and they're very confusing in the way they give you the reports. But when you find a good one, they're going to cost you money, but it's worth it. But first you got to lead with revenue to be able to go hire them.
Yeah. Well, let's stop there then. So when you're looking to hire and outsource maybe not just PPC, but a Facebook ads manager or direct mail manager or whatever it is, what type of things are you looking for? I mean, you talked about like culture index when you're hiring an in-house team, but if let's say you're outsourcing something, what kind of process do you go through in order to be able to hire somebody that's an outsourced company?
Yeah, honestly, so I'm also a real estate agent, right? And I own a real estate brokerage. I have a real estate team. Which is, I would recommend if you can go do that, if your listeners can go do that, they should, because then any deal that comes in that you can't buy or flip, then you just list it, right? So you can monetize all the leads that come in. And so I think it would be very strategic for them to have their real estate license. But now specifically, you were asking about how that plays into lead generation.
Yeah, no, like when you're hiring an outsourced organization, what process do you put them through to determine if they're because you mentioned you've been through a few, half dozen or whatever, when you got to the one that made sense, what did you go through and how did you determine they're actually good and they know?
I lost my train of thought there, but yeah, you're so correct. It's an agent thing.
We talked about a lot of things. It's all right.
No, my mind was going a little bit further than where we're at in the combo, but the real estate agent thing, I brought it because it's referral based. And it's the same thing, I think, with PPC and SEO is you want to find somebody who's got a bunch of other people that can vouch for them and the results. Sure, there's a litany of questions that we ask them. How do you communicate? What's our cost per lead? I mean, there's a whole litany of questions, but what you really want is social proof, and other people can say, yeah, that Todd guy, he's awesome. So, and we've just developed that over time. And again, that's why I think people, when they start, should be a part of a network, whatever that looks like, a mastermind, a local RIA. I'm doing some coaching, Josh, if someone wants to come on and coach with me. You just got to be a part of somebody who's kind of already walked down that road that can help short circuit the learning curve.
Yeah. Do you think, so for somebody that's listening, that's maybe never hired an outsourced agency to manage their PPC or Facebook or whatever, do you think it's a very valuable kind of attribute for that service provider to be an expert in the industry that they're in, or, obviously if they're a service provider, they should be an expert in the platform or the medium in which they're operating within.
Yep.
But being an expert in the specific industry, because obviously like being in the real estate investing space, I know a handful of service providers that specialize in real estate specifically for saying, for instance, my services like content marketing, social media management, podcast management, YouTube management. I only work with real estate investors, and there's a reason for it, right? Because there's the experience that come with it. There's a lot of lingo, a lot of like just kind of different things that are in the real estate investing space that don't really exist in other worlds. Do you think that that's a valuable thing to have when you're looking to hire and outsource third-party management?
Yeah, without question, because someone has to know your industry, know your space, know how you think, know how to communicate with you. So yeah, our PPC guy, he's been in the business for a couple of decades, works with a lot of the top We Buy Houses type companies across the country. We only get our lists from 80/20. They do a great job, but it's specific to people in our space. So they give us the list, which I don't know how they pull this list. It's better than when I was trying to do it from ListSource and these other data providers. But that list is spot on. And then I have an Egyptian call center out of Egypt that calls down the list. It starts to mine it and gets people on the hook and then hands off to my acquisitions manager. Or my leads manager rather. So I think they do need to be industry specific experts. So who are you using for your providers, or who do you recommend?
Oh man, it depends on what you're going after. Well, for example, you mentioned 80/20. Like those are good friends of mine. I love Jesus and Felipe. Those guys are awesome. And 80/20 is like excellent in what they do. I'm in a couple masterminds with them, that sort of thing. A lot of it depends on what you're operating in, like their specialties. So for example, if you're doing Facebook ads, like I would go to my good friends, the Bateman Collective. So they're really, really good. I've had Brandon Bateman on the show before talking about specifically Facebook ads and PPC and that sort of thing. But again, like the people that I would talk, like 80/20, they specialize in real estate. You could really use, okay, perfect example. If you're working with me, like if you own a donut shop and you want to start a podcast, it's the same principles as if I'm managing a podcast for Matt, if he's wanting to start a podcast in the real estate space. It's the same principles, just like you're talking about different topics. It's different execution, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has to do with, do I know the donut industry? Because I can really dial into the audience specifically, curate the message that's going to be very direct towards that audience. I don't eat donuts, really. So I'm not really in the audience. So I can't really like speak on their behalf or whatever. But in the real estate space, I've been in it for so long and I've been in the marketing world so long that I pair those items, bring them together. That's again where like you talk about the 80/20 guys, like they were real estate investors and they built a platform specifically for them to utilize. And they realized like, oh, we actually have something good that could be rolled out as a product. And they're still active investors, right? So I do think, and that's why I asked that question. I do think it's valuable. I think it's something that, you really need to look out for if you're in the real estate investing space, especially if you're somebody that's listening and you never worked with somebody before that's in the real estate investing, or you've never worked with a service provider to run your ads or run your campaigns, whatever it is. You need somebody that's going to be able to go to bat for you on your behalf, but speak the language that you need to speak, because you don't know PPC. You don't know Facebook ads.
Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else. Well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode.
Well, I mean, you and I were talking offline a little bit about masterminds. I know you're a part of some high level masterminds. A new investor might not have the money to join one, but let's be honest, you know, the old phrase that birds of a feather flock together. Like you have to be oriented with people who are thinking like you're thinking, who are going to take risks like you would take them, who are solving problems that you have to solve. So I think you just got to be around people who are doing it. And then those things pop up. It's like, oh yeah, the bait and selective. Oh, it's, 80-20. Like you start to hear the same names and then those people are trusting them, then you trust them and you kind of get plugged in.
Yep.
So I do think it's important to surround yourself with the same like-minded people. But I mean, you're a part of several masterminds, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm only in a couple right now, but I've been in and out of some masterminds before, but all centered around the real estate investing space. Again, I'm trying to become an expert in this industry specifically, and I've been in it for so long, and there's more than enough people to work with, so it's not like I need to branch out into other spaces. Like, there's potential for that. Yes, I could expand, but I just know this industry so well, and I have such a foothold in a network in the industry. Like before you and I were recording, like I asked you if you knew a couple people in Richmond. Like I'm like, you need to get connected with these people, and there's a bunch of people, and those are just people I've known over the last 10 years or so. So for sure. So one of the things I want to kind of pivot into that we haven't talked about yet, but that I really wanted to dig into was your process of working with sellers directly as like. You are the CEO, the person that's running the organization, but you're also still talking to sellers. And obviously, that's something that a lot of people hand off. But in time, like if it's something you're an expert in and you're really good at it, and of course you love doing it, then keep it. So how has that looked for you? Like how has that position kind of shaped and molded your daily routines from where marketing hands off a lead to you and you're getting that to the finish line?
Yeah, well, I think it's just what I do best. I don't think, and this is the secret sauce. I don't think this is the one way that every company has to operate. But for me, that's my sweet spot. Like I'm putting deals together all the time. Part of it is maybe a little scarcity mindset when, people are committing you to a lot of money. Because in my area, the average purchase price is $300,000 to $400,000, right? And if you're buying 5, 6, 7 properties a month, that's a lot of money that you're putting out. And so I kind of want to be there. But also, I just love doing it. Like today, I went on 2 walkthroughs. Hopefully, one of those properties I'll sign up. The other one's going to be a couple weeks down the road. He's trying to divide off a portion of the land for his daughter to keep. But I just enjoy getting kneecap to kneecap with the sellers and then providing a solution. And that's really how I orient myself. It's like, look, I'm not pushy. There's not one size fits all. Like you just tell me kind of where you're at. What are your problems? And I'm listening the whole time. And then I try to solve those specific problems. So I actually enjoy it. And then there's no better high for me than putting that deal together. Now I know I've got to take it, flip it, and then sell it. So there's a whole process that ensues, but putting the deal together for me is the high. So I just do it because I love doing it. My business partner though, I always joke, I'm like, man, you give him like a bottle of wine and an Excel spreadsheet and that's a date night, right? Like he just loves being in front of his computer. He'll work on spreadsheets. He'll do the back end stuff. He'll worry about the numbers.
Great.
Like that's what he's really good at. So we just divide and conquer and it makes sense for us.
Yeah, no, it's good. How big is your team?
Right now we've downsized a little bit at our peak. I mean, we were at probably 30 plus. Now we're probably at 6 to 8 people. Just depends. That's just our in-house team.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course we got contractors and people beyond that, but yeah, we've downsized a lot. The opportunities aren't as much. Are you finding that as well with the other people you interview on your podcast? That
of course
you should buy are kind of winnowing down a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. But the reason why I brought that up is because I think a lot of people, kind of along the same lines of what we're talking about right now, I think a lot of people are, in a way, like we've been taught and programmed in business to like delegate and elevate, and just continually just delegate things and not even being able to be focused on the revenue that's going to be able to, you're generating the revenue that's going to bring, your income into the business, and then be able to delegate those things. Because delegation is based off of if you have the money to do it, right? You got to pay people to do it. So I think that a lot of people are over delegating sometimes. And one of those things is can normally be obviously the thing that they're good at and they're the best at, but it's the thing that controls the revenue, which for you, it's the deal making. Like you specifically said, you like putting deals together and getting it to the finish line and getting those deals closed from the time that it hits your table. You said kneecap to kneecap, like you're talking to people, you're on the phone with them, you're doing the walkthroughs and that sort of thing. And it's refreshing to hear that that has been in this space for 15 years or so, and the size team that you have, you're still the one that's out there doing the deals and making the deals and whether that's on purpose because of deal flow or not is irrelevant. You're the one that's still out there. And I think that a lot of people kind of find it icky in a way to like, oh, I got to go back and be the salesperson. But like, if that's what you're an expert in and you're good at it and you love doing it, there's no better place for you to be, right? I mean, do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like find the thing that brings you joy and then go do that and then outsource the rest as soon as you're able to do that. Like numbers, I have a CFO for that, right? Like I do have some acquisitions people out there. Like one of the ways we still buy is going to the courthouse steps, right? I've got a guy that puts together a list, a guy that goes to the steps. There's a whole slew of people that kind of do the things that I'm not good at. Even with like listings, sometimes I show up and it's, the seller, for whatever reason, they owe too much or they want too much, but it turns out to be a listing. Well, yeah, right there on the spot, I'm trying to sign up the listing. I get the listing agreement. Then I hand it off to a transaction coordinator because I'm horrible at the minutia. It just bogs me down and it takes me forever to do it because I don't really want to do it, right? So I just hand off the stuff I don't like doing and I do the things that I really enjoy doing because they bring me joy, honestly. Because the truth is I love helping people. Before this, Josh, I was a pastor of a couple local churches here. And I just love helping people. So when I show up, like I'm genuinely there to build rapport and then to solve their problems, like to help them. And if I'm not the right solution, I'll tell them that. It's like, hey, I don't think we're the right solution for you. But generally speaking, we can help people through a slew of, there's a plethora of ways, whether it's a listing or I buy it or there's a bunch of creative deals, which I think is, it's a benefit to show up and have those options.
Yeah, I think probably the overall topic, we're going to wind down here, but I think the overall topic of the podcast here will be just how and what to delegate in marketing and sales in your real estate business, because that's what we've talked about a lot. I mean, we go back to the conversation about working with service providers. Then, even before that we were talking about like your in-house team. So you were going through culture index and stuff like that. And then we started talking about service providers. And then now we're talking about you and what you're skilled in and that sort of thing. So I think this is a topic that a lot of people don't talk about. We talk about delegation and hiring and stuff like that in every other part of our team and company. But when it comes to your marketing and sales departments, it's really important to understand, you want to have experts in every seat on the bus when it comes to your marketing and sales. Because if you don't, that's what brings the leads in, and then that's what creates the revenue is the sales, department. And whether that's you and it's a lead manager, another acquisitions person, whatever that is, it doesn't matter. That's what controls and generates the revenue. Well, your marketing department gives you the opportunities to get that revenue through the door. So you have to take this stuff seriously. Like TCs, executive assistants, you don't want them making bad decisions and that sort of thing, but ultimately they don't necessarily control the revenue. So putting an importance on hiring the right in-house team, outsourced organizations that you're going to work with, agencies or whatever, and then deciding what you are going to do is highly important. I think that's some of the biggest takeaways that we're coming away with on this episode with you specifically.
Yeah, and we're kind of in the ethos a little bit, right? We're not as granular maybe, but I think it's important, especially if you're trying to build and scale with the end in mind, right? We always talk about the golden rule, right? Like the golden rule is really, you've heard this, but it's he who has the gold makes the rules, right? And what's the gold in our space that we're in? It's lead generation. Because think about it, once you control that property, you can do anything with it. Like a guy that wholesaled the property to me and made $50,000, or you could take it and flip it. There's creative deals. You could hold on to it, buy and hold. You could sub to it. I mean, you can list it, right? But you got to get them those leads through the door. And then once you control them, then you can have a bunch of dispositions with them. But you first got to generate the leads and handle those correctly, which is what I have this whole thing where I teach people how to kind of do verbal judo. Like when you're kneecap to kneecap with the seller, they have objections and you have to overcome those objections. And there's a strategic way to do that. So, we've been teaching people how to do that for a little while. But you're right. It's all about lead generation. So, and I'd be happy to share some of our vendors and people that we use. I don't get any kickback from it. I've just kind of worked my way through a bunch of vendors that, didn't really pan out or overpromised or didn't communicate, but we've landed on a few really good ones that have provided some success for us.
Yep.
But like I said, then you make the phone ring, and then from there, you're off to the races.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. The overall, like even the statement that you made, the gold is the leads. I mean, that's really what it is. And if you can control the leads and like not just the volume, but the quality. We've talked about quality, like lead quality on a couple of episodes in the past with some other people. So, no, man, this has all been great stuff. I appreciate all the insight, the experience that you've brought to the table. The specific direction that I wanted to go into skewed into something else, but it came back around to where I wanted to go. However, there's a lot of other like ancillary things that like really piled on top that I think there's some really big takeaways for people that are listening. So I want to give you the opportunity to, you've talked about it just a little bit, skimmed over a little bit, but you're getting into coaching and you're starting, like you obviously have the resume to be able to be a coach. So I want you to be able to talk about, like, if somebody wanted to connect with you or learn more about working with you. I know you're taking on a couple students here. Not a lot, but maybe a couple. Yeah. So talk about how people can work with you, who should ideally work with you, and how they can get connected with you if they wanted to.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on. You do a great job. I love the interview. We didn't really get into the nitty gritty of the Cubs versus White Sox, but maybe we'll save that one for another time.
We don't need to. There's nothing to talk about right now.
I know, right? Same on the Cubs side too, unfortunately. But as far as coaching, yeah, what I'd like to do is kind of scale up a little bit and just help other people who are in the same space. It's really for the new person or the business that's just kind of newly formed. I mean, it could be a seasoned investor. I don't know. But my guess is the avatar is kind of a newer person into the space. And you can just find me online. The easiest way probably is on Facebook. It's just Matthew Paxson. So Matthew, Matthew, and then Paxson, Paxson. Just find me there. Send me a direct message. I'll be launching some more formal stuff, but really, Josh, what I'm looking for initially is probably 10 students to just kind of coach, go all in with for a period of time, really see them get some success, kind of iron out any wrinkles that might be in my program that I have, which I'm sure there's some. And then from there, I'll launch nationally. But these first 10 will get access to me in a way that others won't. So if you're interested, don't delay. Send me a note today.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, if you're the first ones in there, then you're going to get kind of priority boarding, if you will. Obviously, once you start to structure things, is like you're gonna. There's always like if you're the first one to something, you get the best of it. So not that you're gonna be like downsizing anything, or you're gonna be worse as you go along, but the first ones through the door typically get the
first gets a worm, baby. Come on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Matt, I appreciate you being on, man. This has been such a great episode. I look forward to definitely having you back again soon and being able to talk about even more, crack open more than what we talked about here.
Without question. Anytime, Josh. Keep up the good work, man. I keep following you online, so I look forward to seeing what else you put out there. So keep up the good work, man.
Awesome. Thank you. That is going to do it for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for joining and listening. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. Share this with your friends, your real estate investor friends. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you go check out my YouTube channel. That's going to be linked down in the description below. I'm putting out a lot of content, teaching people about creating content as a real estate investor, how to get better video, how to manage your socials, and podcast, YouTube, whatever you have interest in. Make sure you do go check that out. Or you can just look up Josh Culler on YouTube and you'll find me and a bunch of other interviews that are there too. Of course, this interview is going to be on YouTube as well if you haven't checked that out. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.